It's a pleasure to welcome in, as always, our 120 Sports MMA analyst, Luke Thomas, out there in Las Vegas getting ready, just about 24 hours away from UFC 209. Luke, thanks for joining us. Sadly, we got to talk about weight cutting, and the big news of the day, as you well know, Khabib Nurmagomedov in the co-main event for that interim title at 155 pounds. Well, the fight is off between Khabib and Tony Ferguson. Khabib had to go to the hospital earlier this morning, reportedly in better shape, but not good enough shape to get this fight done and to make that weight cut at 155. What do you make of today's events?
By the way, I should just note this just across the wire, literally moments ago before we started, Dana White telling Fox Sports 1 that one of the problems apparently was that Khabib Nurmagomedov's team went right to the hospital without calling the UFC first. And so had they called the UFC, according to UFC President Dana White, the fight potentially could have been saved. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but just wanted to put that out there with the most up-to-date information that we have. In terms of what I make of it, man, this is devastating, super devastating. This was by far the crown jewel of the entire card, not really the main card. You know, look, that main event between Wonderboy and Tyron Woodley is great. I have nothing bad to say about it. I have total praise for both of those competitors, and I am looking forward to that. But I've been saying it. I said it on 120 Sports this morning before we knew about what was happening with Khabib and his condition, that this is basically on paper, Nurmagomedov versus Ferguson is like the best that MMA really gets. If what you care about is elite prize fighting, it's incredible, you know? And to lose that, it's bad for UFC. It's bad for the UFC lightweight division, bad for those two guys' careers. Good for Conor McGregor in a way somehow, but it's mostly a real bad day in the sport of mixed martial arts.
It's interesting you bring that up, what we just heard from Dana White, and I saw that before we came on the air here at 120 Sports, and he seemed, obviously, you know how Dana is and how he reacts to guys that miss weight. He gets pissed off, and Luke, he seemed pissed off. This is the third time that this fight between these two has been canceled for one reason or another. Where do they go from here with Khabib? What do we do now, and what's next for both of these guys?
Yeah, you know, we had to sort of take a step back and think about what we want, because as fans, consumers, because part of me feels like the ship has just sailed on this fight. Like, do we really want to put it together again and go through all the emotions? And can you imagine if it fell through a fourth time? It would just be, I mean, it would be the worst. So part of me feels like they just have to move on, and I don't know what direction they're going to go, because these are the two top guys, like, and they're neck and neck with each other. It's really hard to figure out what you're going to do. It looks like Tony's in the catbird seat only because he's healthy and he didn't do anything wrong. So I guess they're going to try and give him somebody, but the only fight that makes sense is the Nurmagomedov fight. So
Right.
they're in a real tough spot with that. I don't know. This is what I mean. Like, fights exist in a certain time and place, and they need to be made on their natural calendar. Now, this one again failed in 2015 and 2016. So there's something to be said for trying to make it a third time. But my point being was, the guys were ready. The division was ready. Nurmagomedov had that 205 win. Ferguson had the win over Dos Anjos. It just was time. They were ready for it. And now that this falls through, creating a roadmap when you have these lingering problems, it's not easy.
We knew that Michael Johnson is in Vegas. He offered to do this fight on short notice. Apparently, Dana White said he asked Tony Ferguson if he wanted to do that, and Tony declined. And even Dana seemed to say, look, we get it. He's prepared for another guy. Should the UFC have backup plans, contingency plans? What do you do? Because this is not the first nor the last time that weight cut or other issues are going to make and derail a fight at the last minute.
Yeah, this is what I said on my radio show today. So Nurmagomedov has not, I wouldn't call it a history of missing weight, but he did miss weight once. I believe UFC 160 against Abel Trujillo. Came in, they had a catch weight of 158. Now, Nurmagomedov went on to thrash Trujillo, but nevertheless, he did have a history. So my thought about this is, if you have ever missed weight in the UFC, now not like, in your early part of your career, but if you have ever missed weight at a certain weight class, and you are going to fight for a title in that weight class, you need the UFC has to have an insurance plan, something in place, because they can't do it for all the fighters all the time. It's way too expensive and a waste of guys' times. Like, any guy who has to be on that kind of calendar who doesn't fight, he's out of commission and can't be doing something else. So they have to be judicious about it. But Nurmagomedov, I'm not going to call him, well, at this point, I guess it is a little bit habitual now that we've got two of them. But heading into this weekend, had that one hiccup. But to me, man, that's really enough. If you want to fight for a title in UFC and you have ever missed weight in that class, so that would not qualify let's say if you missed weight at 155 but decided to go to welterweight, right?
Right.
This is inside that weight class. I think they really, 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 really got to take some insurance policies to heart here.